Hey, that's pretty bad, but not all the way bad. Because the Nets aren't a team that you want to resign yourself to, like, hmm, it's okay to lose to that team. But again, the Raptors, we're in tank mode. Some people are saying this is one of the better tank games we've seen, mostly for the fact that, we're looking at a team, the Raptors, that doesn't want to win a lot of games, but you also get that entertainment value. In this game, despite losing 106 to 102, we got some clutch shot making. We got a lot of block shots by the Nets that stole victory from the clutches of defeat as the Raptors. I mean, they got the shots up at the end, man, but them's the breaks. Grady and IQ combined, forget this, 44 shot attempts. Taco and Nacho Battle Channel says IQ feels like the real deal these last few games. I wrote about this, a pretty deep dive into IQ before, obviously, what happened with his uncle passing. And I thought that he had made significant strides in the pick and roll above all else, but also in hunting his own shot. And that's kind of something that we've been waiting for. That's something we've been waiting to see. In addition to that, just like as a note, a bit of a scratch in my throat. 24 points for Grady Dick, which is, of course, his career high. 6 made threes, another career high, and 14 threes attempted, career high. A lot of these bad boys coming from above the break. Pretty fun. He was letting it go with reckless abandon. The Raptors, a team that, let's look at the starting lineup in this game. Quickley, of course, good player. Grady, not yet in the good impact thing, but you can see the roots of what is going to make a really good player. Malik Williams, I'm not so sure. Garrett Temple, I'm not so sure. He had the Norman Powell moment at the end of the game. He went for it, man. Took it on the fast break. Get it up with the right hand. Boo! Pin that. Bad news. Got it pinned. And Ochai Agbaji, who in this game was 3 for 6, played 35 minutes almost, 7 points, 1 board, 1 assist. It's just like there's not a lot going on there. And we're just waiting. There's a play that really easily identifies what's wrong with it. Is early on in the game, IQ is putting the ball up the floor. They have a fast break. The ball goes out to Ochai on the wing. They have a 2-on-1 situation. The man in the corner, who I believe was Cam Johnson, just sinks completely into the corner where Grady is. Because why? Because Ochai has it above the break, and there's a man who's deep guarding the paint, and Ochai isn't going to be able to take it directly to the rim for a bucket, and they're not worried about him cashing a triple. He takes the triple, he misses it. But it's just the court warped because they don't respect his jumper. That has to come around. If he's able to hit, catch and shoot shots, he's probably never going to be like a 34, 35-minute player in the NBA, but we're looking at a guy who, you play like 12 to 15 minutes. You take some of the harder matchups on the in-between stuff. Maybe it's higher one game, maybe it's lower another game, but if you can have 2 or 3 catch and shoot three-point opportunities fall into your lap, you want to be hitting around like 38%, 36%, probably not even going to cut it. I know it. And then once you start getting into like the differences in percentages, you have to start talking about, well, quite frankly, the how often you can get that shot up, the volume, and the types of shots you're able to make. Like Eric Gordon being able to take like 2 steps back behind the 3-point line, being able to attack closeouts and make like progressive reads and stuff like that. It was fine that he shot 34% or something. But Ochai, with how limited he is with the dribble, it's like you just got to can that 3 and you got to be able to like pound dribble sidestep so you can keep getting it. We'll see. Jacob says Grady can get him up. MSJ says IQ and Dick looked good. JFL and Wara the same, but my God, Malik Gay was terrible. I'm assuming you mean Malik and Gay or Gee. Were terrible. Jalen Temple, dear Lord. Yeah, there's a lot of guys on the team that are not going to be. They're not going to be around the NBA forever, right? That's probably not something we should expect to see. But yeah, HY says, damn, Schroeder had to spoil the game. I think that Schroeder had himself a nice little game. And, 7 of 18, nothing crazy, but 21 points, 9 assists, 7 boards. He has the volume he's been looking for. He has the ball he's been looking for. And that's kind of what he wanted, I think, and there was a bit of a difference between what he wanted and what the Raptors wanted, and so the Raptors have their full mid-level exception to work with once again now. Dennis is no longer on the team, and Dennis gets to put some shots up and beat the Raptors in early April. Everyone wins, right? Coco says Eid Mubarak to those who observe. Of course, I hope that everyone, you had I guess it's about a month, and I know it changes every single year, but those who partook, I hope that it was as fulfilling spiritually and physically and mentally as you wanted it to be, because that's tough. That's a lot of fasting. I do intermittent fasting just by proxy of my day, but never like dedicated fasting. That's got to be so difficult. So, happy Eid to everybody who, made it through. And I hope you enjoy what's to come and what's good in your life. I hope the duos were successful, all that good stuff. I just want to focus mostly on, and actually let's talk about Javon, because we talked a little bit about IQ. We talked a little bit about Grady, but I want to focus on Javon, who started out this game really well. This is something I tweeted about. This is something I talk about quite often, and something I talked about a lot with Jeff Doughton Jr., who now is signed with the 76ers. He's playoff eligible. We'll see what happens. But you see these guards like Jeff and Javon, and as far as the two best G League guards of the past couple of years, Javon and Jeff are both in contention as far as like how they played when they were out there. I think Jeff is a better player. That's totally fine. I think it's mostly because of the defensive end of things, but Javon being like a total heat pump in the G League, Jeff being a total heat pump in the G League, these guys going out there and scoring the hell out of the basketball and then playing like pretty passive at the NBA level. I understand there's pressure. I understand other guys, you don't want to step on toes. I understand it looks bad when you make mistakes, but you gotta, you gotta get shots up. You have, like, as a guard, we allow bigs as basketball fans, coaches, analysts, whatever it is, fellow players. You allow bigs to be passive in a lot of ways because of like roll gravity, rebounding, defense, all kind of that stuff, right? It's Louis Zatzman calls it the Lorenzo Brown corollary. Yeah, it's we allow bigs to be kind of passive because of the passive benefits they provide, and you need bigs. Guards, you don't want to be passive as a guard because the ball is around you so often, and it's like, make a difference when you have it. You can't be passive. And I've noticed Javon, and I'm sure everyone else has like been noticing this lately, way quicker trigger, way more willing to, like, if he sees a gap, he's going to try and punch through it. If he sees the shot, he's getting the shot up. It's just more volume. That's what it's about. Matt Hogg says, what percentage cheat the fast? Are you asking about Muslim people? What percentage cheat the fast? It doesn't matter. I don't know. There's a certain, some people are fundamentalist in how they approach it. Some people are, malleable in how they approach it. Your spirituality is your own, and it is not my. I don't know. I can't deliberate on how people approach, how they treat Islam as far as how they follow it. It's silly. HY says, "Come on, Matt. What kind of question is that? We're talking hoops, man. I don't know what percentage cheat on their fast. Who cares? But God bless those who partook. God bless in any facet." Grady, though, another guy getting shots up. I like so much above the break. This is something we've really been waiting for, is major volume. And the cool thing is that Grady is somebody who, because of his high release point, because of his variable footwork that he's able to get into these shots with, he can start bumping that volume up. I always love guys who get volume up. That's what we want. That's what we're looking for. Volume, you got to test it out. It's why, when OG Anunoby kind of started popping off and was like averaging like 18-4, maybe it was like 19-4 towards the end of the Tampa season for that stretch. And then as far as what OG was trying to do and whether that could, translate to the next level, let's say, the next type of role that he wanted or was trying to get, you need to see volume to see if it's real. volume is everything because it helps translate to the next role, the next level of player you want to be. So Grady using this part of the season as a means to just like get shots up, pretty good. The on-ball creation is still very limited, and rightfully so. Nobody said that, he was going to be a ball handling wizard who can like, you know, run a big pick and roll and like push dribble into space and pull up like Damian Lillard or something like that, or not even like, DJ Augustine or Devontae Graham. That wasn't the expectations early on. Who knows when he's like 26, maybe he has some of those reps in and can do it. But it was just like, we want this guy to kind of make a killing out of triple threats, beating closeouts and all that kind of stuff. He's done really well. There was like that one, right? It's like he gave that jab, put the ball down, snatch it back, step back, banged it. That was fantastic, HY says, but giving it back on the other end. We get to talk about stuff though, right? Like IQ gives it back on the other end. Garrett gives it back on, like, this is a team that's not very good at defense. And, God bless, Mikal Bridges, he took 9 attempts in this game. Cam Thomas was having a Cam Thomas game where he scores 23 points on 22 shots, but more used possessions. Schroeder had 18 attempts. Like, we got to be able to talk about a team that's losing so many games. We got to be able to talk about as far as like, what we're looking for from these Raptors. We have to be able to talk about different aspects of their game without being like, well, it's bad elsewhere. That's just not, it's kind of like it's what coaches talk about, right? A coach doesn't talk about players as far as like, this player can't do this player can't do this. A coach talks about players and thinks about players like, what can this player do? I talked about it on last episode, but Ready to Diagram, the podcast that Evan Gilberto and Bowser to Bowser do, they talked about 4.5 out offense. And basically the genesis of that is that there are some guys who couldn't shoot, but they're also not playing like traditional bigs, and their limitation created the genesis, necessity is the mother of invention, of a different type of like working out of the dunker spot or working on the in-between. And that kind of stuff, it creates a different look. You have to be able to work with the different types of players you have. Shooting a three, players who were smaller started shooting threes better. It wasn't the bigs who innovated there. It was smaller players. Why? Because they couldn't just go bang around as big men. So while, yes, Grady is giving it back on defense and IQ is giving it back on defense, and they both got bludgeoned in this game. They got 44 shots up, almost half of the Raptors' overall attempts. They drove okay offense, and we got to talk about what they did, man. That's what we're looking for. We have to be able to identify, in a season where so many people are losing games. We're just watching the Raptors lose so many games. They're not a good team. Malik Williams is the starting center. Garrett Temple started at power forward. Garrett Temple. That's the thing, right? Garrett Temple started at power forward. Claxton had 14 points, 11 boards, 4 assists, 5 blocks. Clowney had 10 points, 7 boards, 7 blocks. Malik was 3 for 10. Garrett was 1 for 6. Mohamed Ugi was 1 for 7. Like, it wasn't the backcourt that, lost the Raptors this game. It was just getting absolutely smashed in the front court. You got to take the wins where you can get them. And I thought that Dick and Quickley, their process in this game was very good. Quickley really hunting his own shot, especially late in game. I loved they just ran like here. We have a whiteboard, everybody. We have a whiteboard. Oh, you can see the ring lights. Look at that. Okay, so let's get ready. For people listening in the audio, I've got a whiteboard here. This is not a mainstay, though. So anyway, Garrett Temple inbounds the ball to IQ. This is where we're going to run it. Then Garrett Temple enters here and runs a brush screen. IQ comes around and gets switched onto Cam Thomas. IQ just makes a little step back, cans a triple. We're hunting shots. We're looking for who we can work on, who on the other team is somebody that we might be able to score against. And IQ late in the game, he finds space. He sees Cam. He knows like Cam is not the strongest. He can get to his shot. Even earlier, I think like 3 minutes in gameplay earlier, he was able to he was able to like just he was a step back from 3-point line, ball found him, ball goes up, cashed it. The next play, Grady, the ball finds him in the corner, cashed it. These guys are going band for band down the stretch. I like it. I love it. Coco says living on borrowed whiteboard time. JD Hunt says it's not a mainstay though. Famous last words. Joseph Cassidy says stolen whiteboard nice. Hope you give that back to coach after. And then Lewis says, honestly, I'm with the people. Why do you have a whiteboard that you will no longer have soon? What's the story? Okay, so basically what happened, you can actually see right here for audio listeners, there's, well, maybe you can't see it as well, but the drywall, the plaster, some of it is missing because I originally was going to put this whiteboard up on my wall just for tonight, and I was going to draw on it while standing here. But then I realized I had to move it, and it ripped some of the drywall off, which, pretty funny. However, this is meant for the fridge. Oleg bought it because he wanted to put it on the fridge. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to use this tonight because I thought it was a magnet. I thought it would, tack onto the fridge like that. And then I tried to take it off the fridge and it was so sticky, and it's through tape and all that kind of stuff. That's what it is. This has to go back onto the fridge because it's not mine. Oleg took the he went and bought a whiteboard before I did, which is kind of insane. But them's the breaks. That's the whiteboard story. It's not as exciting as anybody would have liked. But get this, this is magnetized. Anyway, I don't know. There's different magnetized things. But this whiteboard is not a mainstay. Yeah. So Emmanuel hitting shots, was pretty excited about it. I liked watching his process in this game, especially like they flattened a lot of this. This happens with Claxton, right? Claxton can defend in quite a few different actions, especially when we consider like pick and roll. And the fact that the Raptors ran way more pick and roll in this game, why? Like, it's probably not surprising that Quickley found his way to so many shots because the Raptors are running more pick and roll because it's Malik Williams instead of Kelly Olynyk. And Kelly Olynyk can operate and work through the Raptors' automatics very quickly, and they can get a lot of back cut scoring, and they're able to kind of spread the offense out over quite a few different players. They lost basically all that aspect of their offense in this game. So Quickley is working through a bunch of pick and roll reps, which made this game unique and pretty fun. And I thought that he had a lot of good ones. And then Claxton switched out on a lot. He beat Claxton off the bounce, which, as far as beating bigs off the bounce, Claxton's one of the more difficult ones in the NBA. He got into the teeth of the defense repeatedly. And while 10 of 24 is nothing to write home about, having 32, 7, and 9 is. It was a good game. HY says Quickley was celebrating quite a bit, needs to tone it down. If you're going to celebrate, lock up the dub. Yeah, I'm not much of a celebrate guy when I play basketball, although I've never played at such a level. Guys just got to have fun out there, though. And, like, again, this Raptors team, I don't blame Quickley for celebrating some of the things he did because, like, have fun. And as far as lock up the dub, once the team is better, let's talk. The team is not good, man. Like, once again, Malik Williams, Garrett Temple, Ochai Agbaji. And as good as Grady was tonight, we're talking about a guy who has been like, geez, he really is not like a strong impact player currently. He loses a lot of minutes. He gets beat on defense a lot. Them's the breaks. Javon Freeman-Liberty is getting his chance in this game. Mohamed Ugi played 23 minutes and took 7 shots. Jordan Nwora took 10, It's just like, this team is not a serious team. This team is not going to win games. And it would be fun if Emmanuel Quickley was able to like power them through it. I think he did his part for the most part. There were shots late in the game that just got erased, and credit to the Nets, particularly Clowney and Claxton in particular, because of their ability to erase shots around the rim. Although I will quibble. Grady had a drive into the lane, took it up, tried to make a little baby hook, and I think it was goaltending. It was in the second quarter, but they didn't call it. Conspiracy time. What is the motivation? But yeah, I thought it was a really fun game, mostly from that point of time, because Jacob Tarasov says it would be a real drag this season if you only celebrated wins. That's correct. There's only been 24 of them in the whole season, and how many of them came while Scotty was wearing a jersey, right? You can't look at this season as somebody who, everybody's tapping into every game. Most people who are in this chat anyway, you're watching 82 times, 82 games. You got to be able to enjoy things outside of the purview of just like wins and losses. Lewis Statsman, big wins and lessons guy. JD Hunt says so many lessons this season, so many lessons. You got to be able to try and enjoy some things like Grady Dick having the slow uptick in above the break 3-point shooting. That's been getting better. Emmanuel Quickley being able to get to the rim a little bit more often. And also on top of that, shooting much better, a much higher percentage on his drives than even he did in New York. The uptick in pull-up dribble frequency, all this kind of, or off the pole shooting frequency. These types of things are important. And also some of the playmaking out of the pick and roll for Quickley and the playmaking out of handoffs for Grady. We got to be able to, pay attention to this kind of stuff. And that kind of stuff was fun over the course of the season, and especially tonight, because these guys, like 32 and 24, they comprised a lot of the Raptors scoring in this game, obviously. 56 points. They scored over half the points. Pretty fun. Defensively, I think the Raptors had the Nets don't score the ball very well. This was a pretty easy assignment. They switched a lot of actions, and also just keeping like Malik at the level of the screen and having guys fight over it. They flattened a lot of stuff out, and also being able to converge on their bigs, and the fact that like their bigs in Claxton and Clowney and, I guess Daron Sharp to some degree, you're looking at guys who they don't do well with the gang up. They're not doing like a fantastic job with it. The Raptors were in a decent position to kind of like hang in this game, and they certainly did. And the defense wasn't too bad. But it's like we're looking at a team that just doesn't have a lot of options as far as like what they're able to do defensively. And so a lot of teams are able to pick on them. But the Nets didn't have too easy a time, It's a tough game out there when you're the less talented team more often. Like Clowney, I like. Claxton, I like. Cam Thomas, less happy about his approach. Very funny. He's an elite player to watch, but not cheer for, I think, because some of his process is absolutely nuts, insane. Cam Johnson isn't even starting on this team, right? And he's definitely one of the 5 best players. Trendon Watford is interesting. I think he's a very interesting player. I have a friend, James, who has likened him to Pascal before, although I don't see it at that level. I definitely see like why Trendon is a likable player. It's just a better roster and better players. The Raptors at this point in time have been just so nicked and like banged up that you're like looking at a team that really struggles. HY says, man, they can't find a better player than Malik in the G League. And then Jacob Tarasov says they did HY. Jonte Porter. And then HY says, whoa, it's looking like Jonte is going to be banned. I mean, to the Raptors' credit, just as far as the on-court stuff, they did find one of the best bigs in the G League, Jonte Porter. They really did. Jonte was well on his way, I think, to carving out an NBA career. There were things I've talked about on this podcast. People have heard me talk about, like, it's some of the foot speed stuff has to get better. Some of the training, working on getting like that NBA body. Yes. Being more aggressive in the short roll so that you can force certain types of rotations so that, your passing can kind of pop off. We were looking for that kind of stuff, and that was all great. However, he's being investigated for illegally like cooking the books, let's say. This is all alleged. But the Raptors did find that guy. They did. He just also, I mean, if he did it, it's really bad. If he didn't do it, he has a long path to like, not only being somebody who could play on the Raptors, but a guy who could carve out a career. That's kind of what it was. 2 From Lewis Atzman, he says, quickly, how long before All-Star, or how seriously do you take these numbers at this point in the season? And then Coco says, isn't it really hard to make All-Star as a guard because there are so few spots? Lewis, we have to do a podcast again soon, but we did the big Quickley podcast initially, and I said I don't see stardom there. I don't. Now, you can be a very good guard and not be a star. There's a lot of room to be very good in the NBA and not be a star. You know, that's kind of where I'm at on Quickley. There are many things about his game that I really appreciate. I really hope that the synergy between he and Scotty improves next season, because this year it was almost non-existent. It wasn't good. But I think it would be very hard for Quickley to improve at so many things to actually be considered like a star level guard. And especially when you consider that, like, it's pretty clear that the Knicks framework defensively was papering over some of his like pretty severe limitations as a point of attack defender. So star stuff for Quickley, no. Do I buy a lot of the process at the end of the season? Yeah, I do. I think, but the two things exist at the same time. Like, I like how he's playing at the end of the season, but also on a good team, the volume won't necessarily be this high, which affects the numbers that affect the star conversation. And then also, I think, like, as far as just being like a star in general, De'Aaron Fox didn't make the All-Star game this year, right? Darius Garland. He's always the one I reference because Darius really rocks. But yeah, pretty hard to be a star guard in the NBA. You have to score like 27 points a game and have like 8 assists a game. It's nuts. The expectations are so silly for guards. And the thing is, like, those expectations are silly, but on top of that, we're looking at like guards do it. So those are the stars. Giovanni says Quickley's release is too slow. HY says Quickley needs to bulk up. I mean, and Giovanni says also Quickley's handle needs improvement. I do think that Quickley's release is slower than a lot of other lead guards who shoot as much as he does. I do think that's true. His base is pretty wide. It takes him a little while longer to get into it. He's very particular. And then also on top of that, low gather, low set point. He's not that quick. All of that is true, which makes it tougher for him to like spam pick and roll pull-ups. I think he's a better pull-up shooter than Fred VanVleet, but Fred VanVleet is a lot quicker getting the shot off, so he can manipulate over the pick and roll in a different way, for example. Because I saw people were talking about Fred today, all that kind of stuff. HY says he has to set up. I agree. I think that Quickley has to really set up his shot. It's tough for him to get into his pull really quickly, especially with the way he likes to set his feet. Lewis says, you're no fun. Joseph Cassidy says, get him, Lewis. That's basically fighting words from Lewis. Yeah, Lewis and I will debate this. We love to debate Raptors point guards. Lewis, forever the optimist for Fred. Me, forever the pessimist. But then I wouldn't call him, the slur for little people like so many Raptors fans love to do. So suddenly, despite me saying he had so many limitations, but that I still considered him a valuable NBA player, I became a guy who was like pro Fred. I don't know how that happened. I put in years of Fred pessimism, and they took it away because I wouldn't call him a slur. Unbelievable, man. You just can't win with some people. Lewis says, speaking of all-star guards, Fred is not an all-star, unless you're probably not arguing that. But yeah, regardless, the conversation around guards in Toronto is pretty funny. And I think the whole point is that everybody is ridiculously spoiled after watching years and years of Kyle Lowry. Them's the breaks. Joseph Cassidy says, versus Lewis, you will always be the bad guy. You know what? That's okay. I think, was it Angel Reese? She was like, I'm the villain. I'll be the villain. I'll be the villain in this situation. HY says, I am a Fred pessimist. And Giovanni says, Isaiah Collier has all-star guard ceiling in the draft. I do think that I haven't seen much. Admittedly, I haven't seen much of a lot of the guard, any prospect really, coming out of the draft. So there's I have to watch a whole bunch of tape, talk to a whole bunch of people around the league, and then also my scout friends who are willing to give me not just like little thoughts, but hours of their time. And I got to learn about a lot of guys, but Collier, I mean, geez, the tape is pretty gnarly. He really, really pops off in the tape. And we, depending on how the draft lottery goes, it changes how many deep dives into prospects we do. But it was pretty rewarding that last year we did all the deep dives into prospects and gave Grady a lot of time, and Grady ended up being the draft pick. So we immediately had a whole bunch of stuff to reference people to. My hope is that, I don't know, Collier might be in that middle ground between 6 and like 15, that it seems like the Raptors are not going to, well, let's say like 8 and 15, that the Raptors aren't going to be picking in. But if they really like him, who knows? I'm pretty sure that we'll probably do like a deep dive into him, if not him and like a couple other guys on a singular episode. Jaden says, thoughts on Ron Holland? Not much, but we did a draft podcast that we talked about Holland a decent amount. But yeah, more draft stuff to come in the future. But yeah, this is kind of where we're at. Draft stuff. Last year, there wasn't this much draft talk towards the end of the season. There just wasn't. We were talking mostly about the play-in, all that kind of stuff. We're talking about basketball. And we don't know what's really going to happen at the end of the season or the draft lottery, all that kind of stuff. But the draft looms very large for these Toronto Raptors and will be a major consideration of all discussions about the future of the team. Running off the screen, that's Mac, who will also be almost assuredly, he will be on to discuss prospects, because I'm greedy and I like to ask all my friends to come discuss prospects with me. 2 years in a row, Mac had the Raptors pick. Scotty went against the grain. The next year, he predicted Koloko. Calling your shot on pick 33 is an absolute absurdity, man. The fact that Mac had that, but Mac didn't have Grady. And I, on Blue Jays Talk Plus, because there was no Raptor show during the summer, I called Grady as the pick. And I also was the one who reported that Grady worked out with the Raptors. Although that's like, it's kind of a thing, right? Is like, if you're not someone who reports things often, because you're like, well, I'd only ever report something if I heard it like totally confirmed 100%, because a lot of reporting is like hearsay, right? Or something like that. Everyone's like, well, how does this guy know anything? I've never seen him reporting before. And it's like, well, I don't know. You report like 3 things a year that you get, and then that's what it is. Nobody's Woj. I mean, Woj and Shams made it impossible to be like someone who actually reports things. But yeah, Grady, I was pretty excited about them getting him, and then they did. I remember, Mac, our mutual friend Curly, at the draft party, we're like, Grady, is pretty fun. But I know Mac, obviously, Keontae George. You were big on Keontae. A little bit of that dog in him, Yeah, but more draft stuff to come in the future. But the Raptors, a pretty fun game that they did end up losing, because Dennis Schroeder cashed some late threes that kept them afloat as the Raptors kind of tried to pull away. And then a little bit of more, well, the big difference at the end of the game, in my mind, was the fact that the Nets were able to clean the glass completely wipe the glass. A lot of blocks, a lot of stopping power at the rim late. So that kind of stuff is important, and it was a big part of the end of the game. Luca Pretnemer says, or Pratnemer, whichever one it is, says, Samson, how do you factor in G League experience versus college versus international? These are questions I love asking scouts, because they actually have the background to discuss these things intelligently. I really do not, I don't like to speak about something unless I've watched the film. And which I'm very comfortable talking about these games afterwards, because I watch the games. I think I have a good eye for it. But I don't watch enough film. I don't watch enough international. I don't watch enough G League. I don't watch enough college, not only to understand one of them, but to compare them across. And there are scouts who do. And those are the guys I will definitely be asking. Although, G League is pretty accessible, because I can see some guys. Like, I watched Scoot last year, and I was like, wow, Scoot looks really great. And of course, Scoot has not had the rookie season he's wanted to have, or many people wanted him to have, but he did look good when he played here. And he and Jeff Doughton had a really fun battle. 905 versus Ignite. But obviously the Ignite is folding. But I guess the Ignite is like a huge success story for student athletes because the Ignite got some guys paid and it helped motivate the NIL stuff. So, yeah. One last question, which I think is pretty fun. Cade Gregory says, your prediction, what is the starting lineup game 1 of next season? Okay. Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, Grady Dick, Jakob Pertl, Scotty Barnes. That's what I think it'll be. That would be fun. I think they would have a lot of good offense out of that lineup. And you're basically asking like Scotty and Jakob, how much can you clean up on the back end? And maybe RJ and Quickley are able to tighten things up. Maybe Grady has a good off season of bulking and getting, his body a little bit more ready to go through the rigors of an NBA defense or competing against an NBA offense, but we'll see. I know that's like the least fun prediction I could have made, but I don't think that the Raptors will go out and sign a guy I don't think they'll go out and sign a guy who could be in the starting lineup more so than anybody on the roster currently. And also, I don't think that they'll draft a guy who immediately steps into that situation. Like it's probably likely that the Raptors don't draft a player that they like way more than they like Grady, and Grady will be in year 2 at that point in time. But they might draft a player who's older than Grady, to be quite frank with you. But yeah, boring answer, but a really good question. And a question that, if things change, would be really interesting to come back and reconsider. Anyway, that feels like a podcast. For anybody who listened, thank you so much for listening. Make sure to like the video before you get out of here. Subscribe if you feel so inclined. And on top of that, if you want to subscribe over RaptorsRepublic.com, there'll be lots of draft coverage. That's fantastic. There'll be lots of end of season and off-season writing that Lewis and I will be doing, among other writers at Raptors Republic. And if you have the means, it helps support us as we try and keep, coverage anywhere but TikTok and Twitter. Because I promise you guys, if TikTok and Twitter become the only spaces where you can get like basketball coverage, it's going to be dog shit. I mean that so much, man. If it's like only like Sportsnet, TikTok, and Twitter, it's going to be dog shit. That would be tough. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. There's a couple more questions about the draft, but sorry I won't be answering those now, but there will be so much draft coverage coming. So thank you. JD, I see your question as well. Make sure to ask me after next game, and I will consider that. But I'm getting out of here. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. And whether you got into this in the morning or at night, have a blessed day and goodbye.